So two things have got to happen. I got to put the readers on, and we're going to start reading the first chapter, at least, of Don't Touch My Petunia by Tara Sheets. And here we go with the back. The Holloway women each have a special gift passed down through generations, each one a little different. Juliet possesses a magical green thumb which makes her job managing the local floral shop a dream. She may be a bit wild, but she knows what she wants to save enough money to buy the shop from her boss. Then in marches Logan O'Connor, more annoyingly handsome than ever, turning all her plans upside down. Logan hasn't been back on Pine Cove Island since he was 18 and broke Juliet's teenage heart. Now it turns out he's her boss's nephew, and they'll be spending his days remodeling the shop and barking orders at her. For the sake of the business, Juliet will have to ignore their simmering attraction and work with Logan, but that doesn't mean she has to make things easy for him, because no one knows better than she that one tiny, perfectly planted bit of garden magic could uproot Logan's plans and keep him out of her way, and nothing would make her happier. At least that's what she thinks. And on the cover it says, it doesn't give anything like it does the other cover. Okay. Of course, the previous book was Don't Call Me Cupcake. And this one's to her daughter, Maya, for the magic and laughter and the joy. You light up our lives. Okay, chapter 1. If a guy was going to fondle her petunias, the least he could do was at least act like he cared. Pawing at them with a big, meaty ham fist while he stared absently out at her shop window was not cool. Juliet Holloway frowned, swiping a lock of her dark hair behind her ear. It was going to be a long day at Romero's florist shop, and she still had 2 more flower arrangements to put together before the morning rush. She leaned over the counter and called across the room, "Excuse me." The guy messing with her petunia plant didn't move or turn around. He had broad shoulders, and his head was almost reached the top of the door frame. His jeans, a gray t-shirt, and a baseball cap, he looked like one of those NFL athletes, completely out of place, surrounded by delicate summer blooms and hanging fuchsia baskets. She called again louder, "Hello?" Nothing. He just kept running a giant hand over the fragile purple flower. Juliet bristled. The plant was her newest project. Normally she could make anything grow and thrive, like all Holloway women before her. She was born with, page 2, a special gift. Hers was garden magic. A customer had given her a potted petunia after rescuing it from an office cubicle. The poor thing had been halfway to the grave, but she'd nurtured it back to life, and now some linebacker was mauling it. She marched across the room and tapped the man firmly on his back. It was a rock-hard, muscular back. He probably was one of those gym guys who spent all day pumping iron. "Can you please not touch that?" He swung around and pulled an earbud out of his ear. Loud thumping music spewed from his headset. Even with a baseball cap and mirrored sunglasses, he looked vaguely familiar. Strong jaw, light stubble, high cheekbones, full lips, a tiny prickle of recognition tiptoed down her spine. She gestured to the pot of flowers. "Please don't touch my plant." He frowned and pulled the other earbud out. "What's that?" Juliet sighed. "Gym rats. Brains in their bicep." She enunciated each word carefully. "Don't touch my petunia." His lips twitched. She closed her eyes, ignoring the flush of embarrassment creeping up her cheeks. "Way to set yourself up, genius. Maybe he didn't notice." "I'm not usually so forward," he said, and his deep voice hovered on the edge of laughter. "Okay, so he noticed. Big whoop. Whoever he was immature, and she didn't have time for this." She grabbed the plant and turned away from the hem of the flowery skirt caught on the edge of a low shelf, and she yanked it free before escaping to the back counter. "Have we met before?" he called. She threw him a glance. Page 3. He gave her a slow smile that sent a jolt of physical awareness from the top of her head to the tips of her blue-painted toenails. "I feel like I know you." For a pickup line, it was pretty bad, but he had a $1,000,000 smile and knew how to use it. The face, the superhero physique, all he needed was a cape or a giant hammer or something. He probably didn't have much practice with pickup lines because he didn't need any. He sauntered toward her. There was something familiar about the way he walked, like he owned the world, but she couldn't place him. When he reached the counter, she was glad to be on the other side. It wasn't that she felt threatened at 5 feet 9 inches. She was comfortable with tall people, but this guy towered over her, and when he looked at her like that, well, it was unsettling. He took off the baseball cap and moosed his tawny hair. Juliet sucked in a breath. Then he removed the sunglasses and fixed her with a gaze as deep as dark as the earth was after a rainstorm. Something inside her cracked open, and a trickle of long-forgotten feelings threatened to bubble to the surface. Logan. She took an involuntary step back, trying to hide her surprise by leaning casually against the wall. Super cool. She was an iceberg of cool, except she misjudged the distance to the wall and stumbled. That bad, huh? His mouth kicked up at one corner. It was the same cocky grin that had once made her naive teenage heart yearn for things that were impossible. Logan was 4 years older than her. He'd been far too busy with cool kids to notice her. And when he finally did, at that night at his senior graduation party, it was only to judge her and find her lacking. Stay icy. She gave a half shrug. It's been a while. Page 4. Over 13 years. She studied him from beneath her lashes. His face was deeply tanned, his features sharper and more defined. He had faint lines near the edge of his eyes, and there was a weariness in them, as if she'd seen them before. He'd grown up. Aren't you in the army or something? She asked. 3 tours in Afghanistan last she heard, but that was old gossip from years ago. I was. He shifted his gaze to the window. But I'm done with that now. She still couldn't believe he was standing like some ghost from a past life. Pine Cove Island was about as small as any Pacific Northwest island town could get. The Logan she remembered had been a powerhouse of restless energy. He couldn't wait to leave. Nothing was going to stop him from getting out to see the world. Certainly not a 14-year-old, nobody with stars in her eyes. What are you doing here? She asked. He shrugged. I've come home, going to fix up my grandfather's old house near the woods. It's on the other side of yours, I think. She nodded vaguely, even though her heart thumped in her chest. When she was little, she used to wander those woods, spying on him and his grandfather through the trees. Logan always seemed larger than life, a great mystery she wanted to solve. What it must have been like to have a family like his, to have people involved in your life who loved you and stuck around. So, he stepped away from the counter, glancing around the shop. You work here? Yes, a twinge of pride settled over her. Her floral arrangements were the best on the island, and her creative designs won first place every spring at the Flower Bud Festival. Everyone knew the plants from Romero's flower shop bloomed well past their season. Her magic growth potion kept them healthy and vibrant. All a person had to do was look at them to know that they were special. Page 5. But Logan wasn't looking at the plants. He was peering over her shoulder, frowning at the back room. Juliet cringed. She knew exactly what he saw. Floral wire and paper scattered across the cutting table, wilted flowers and greenery all over the floor, stacks of packing crates blocking the closet with a broken door, and random baskets overflowing with gardening tools and cleaning supplies. She shifted uncomfortably. It's a work in progress back there. His calculating gaze took over in the cluttered cash register area, her coffee cup sitting on a stack of inventory papers and the pile of broken plastic pots in the corner of the room. Juliet resisted the urge to throw a tarp over them. Why hadn't she taken the time to take him to the recycle bin yet? He slowly made his way around the shop, stopping to check out the crackled tile on the floor near the door. She'd been meaning to find a doormat big enough to hide it. When he jiggled a wooden shelf to test it for sturdiness, irritation spiked. She bit the inside of her cheek and grabbed her coffee cup. Why was he ignoring her gorgeous plants and only focusing on the shop's flaws? Because he's still judging you. It's what he does. That's what her mind is telling her. Juliet smoothed her thrift store tank top and sipped her coffee cup, glaring over at him at the rim of the cup. The hazelnut chocolatey goodness was almost enough to quell the wave of annoyance building inside her. The moment he ran his finger along the chipped paint above the door frame, Juliet decided she had about enough. Maybe this place was a little shabby around the edges, but she loved it, and it was her own. And if everything went according to plan, someday soon it would be her own. The last thing she needed was some drill sergeant strolling around assessing its faults. She half expected him to break out a white glove and check it for dust. This is page 6. Is there something I can help you find? She asked. The exit door, for example? He didn't answer. When he came back to the recycled wooden bookshelf filled with handmade bath products, he poked at the basket of soap, frowning. Juliet felt as if he was poking at her. She didn't have to take this. The sooner he left, the sooner she could quit this messed up stroll down memory lane and get back to work. Are any particular plant you need? She prodded. He flicked a glance at the ivy spilling over the top shelf. I'm not really into plants. Not surprised. He turned to look at her. Why's that? I'm not sure you could handle them. The Logan she remembered could never sit still. He was always flying from one activity to another like a cyclone, leaving everyone in the dust if they couldn't keep up. It takes effort and patience to keep them green. I have a plant, he said. It's green. Juliet gave him a dubious look. Cactus? Those things could survive almost anything, even cyclones. Plastic, he looked amongst most smug. The best kind, if you ask me. Oh, the end. Juliet gritted her teeth. She set the cup down, sloshing her mug on the counter. If you're not here for plants, what do you want? He gestured to the black truck parked on the street. Lumber delivery. I need to know where to make the drop this evening. Page 7. Everything suddenly clicked into place. Her boss had mentioned a supply delivery for the new deck and greenhouse they were building for the remodel. It suited Logan to work for the lumber yard. It would give him a chance to put those stupid G.I. Joe muscles to good use. Juliet pointed to the fence near the front walkway. You can just leave it out there. I think I better take it around back. She pointed to the fence again. Right there is fine. Logan frowned. Are you the only one here? I should talk to... I am the manager, she said testily. I'm in charge of this place. He cocked an eyebrow. Yep, she threw her arms wide. Just little old me, the manager, and I'm telling you to leave it out front near the fence. Logan seemed about to say something, then decided against it. She crossed her arms and then stared into his dark eyes. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Neither of them blinked. It was a silent battle of wills. She wasn't going to look away. She could stand there all day if she had to, even if her delicious hazelnut mocha was sitting right in front of her and growing cold, even though the extra vanilla whipped cream was probably already melted by now. She licked her lips. He blinked. His gaze flicked to her mouth. Score. When he turned to leave, she felt a surge of triumph. She was in charge. She was the decider. So what if he crushed her silly hopes when she was young and vulnerable? He probably didn't even remember. And none of that mattered. Now, she was 27, all grown up, and nothing he said or did could get under her skin. At the door he paused and glanced back. There is one plant I can handle just fine. A spark of mischief lit his eyes, but his expression was all politeness. Juliet didn't trust it. What would that be? Petunias. He shot her a crocodile grin. I'm really good at handling petunias. That was page 8. We're going to see how many... I think we can get up to page 20. This is page 13 that I have marked. Look, he said, pouring a cup of coffee, I know you like to do everything by yourself, and you're really good at it. Really good at it. But one of these days, you're going to have to let someone in. The remodel starts tomorrow. You need the help, which brings me to the reason I stopped by. He raised the mug and took a sip. Juliet jerked her hand up. I wouldn't, he choked, coughed. Sorry, she said. I tried to warn you. What the fresh hell is this? He wheezed, staring into the coffee mug. It tastes like water strained through the compost dirt. Well, Kevin made it, so you never know. He set the cup firmly in the sink. I'm going to go get something real. You want a hazelnut mocha? She grinned. Always. Sweet, sweet nectar of the gods. Extra vanilla whipped cream, right? Juliet nodded. He was the greatest boss on earth, possibly the greatest person. She adored him to the moon. I hired my nephew to facilitate the remodel, Romeo announced. Juliet stopped grinning. I'm going to facilitate the remodel. I know, but you'll be working in the shop. He's going to do the actual labor. She followed him to the front entrance. Is he qualified to build an entire deck and a greenhouse? I mean, I thought we were hiring contractors. Don't worry, Romero said. He's done this kind of work before, and he'll have some people help out when needed. Page 14. Juliet wished Romero would have asked her before doing the hiring, or at least Let her be a part of the process. Romero didn't have the best track record when it came to choosing solid employees. If he was hiring his nephew, it was obviously for personal family reasons, and it was never a good idea to mix family with business, not that she knew. Aside from her cousin, Juliet was the last remaining Holloway on the island, but it didn't sound like a good idea. Who knew what his nephew's actual credentials were? She crossed her arms in frustration. For all she knew, he was going to be some lazy deadbeat who did sloppy work, another person she'd have to babysit. When does he start? Tomorrow, she said a familiar voice behind her. She whirled around. Logan O'Connor stood in the doorway. He nodded to Romero. Uncle Ro. Juliet's mouth fell open, and had she had to force it shut. Uncle freaking Ro? She stared at Logan in disbelief. He looked at her like he needed someone to scrape the smirk off his face with a shovel. She happened to have one. You're just in time to join me for coffee, Romero said, slapping him on the back. But first I want you to meet Juliet, my shop manager. We've already met, Logan said, holding out his hand. She shook it because she was super managery and professional, and also because there was a shovel in the back room calling to her. But clocking him in the face with it might not seem very welcoming, so shaking hands was probably the better choice. Nice to see you again, he said. His grip was firm and strong. Likewise. Logan, going to fix up things inside too, Romero said. This is page 15. Make it more organized. You'll have to give him some room to work, okay, hun? Show him where things are. She dipped her head, unable to go through a full nod. For 3 years she managed this shop. She had a system, and she knew how things worked. Maybe it didn't look organized to others, but it worked for her. Everything was under control. And now she was just supposed to step aside and let his lumbering nephew come in and change everything? Romero kept talking about shelves and paint and mirrored paneling, but Juliet stopped listening. It's not that she didn't want it to fix the shop. She really did. But it bothered her that the Romero was making all the decisions without asking for her input. She planned on owning the shop someday. These changes happening now were going to be changes that she'd have to live with for years to come. It was frustrating not to have any say about what was being done. And here stood Logan, smirking at her. All she could think about was how he had judged her shop, judged her all those years ago, and found them both lacking. All she could hear was, I'm not really into plants. He was the last person she wanted in her personal space, but by some jacked-up twist of fate, she was going to have to be stuck with him for the next few weeks. I'll do what I can to make it look decent in here, Logan said. It shouldn't be too hard, even though the back room is a train wreck, practically a fire hazard. I don't know how anyone can work back there. But don't worry, Uncle Ro, I'll take care of it. He looked pointedly at her. I'm always up for a challenge. She narrowed her eyes. There is nothing here that I can't handle, he said with an arrogant shrug, and that was it. She made up her mind right then and there not to make things easy for him. He may have had an uncle who ran the show, and he may have grown up with the rich, doting parents and popular friends and family picnics with noodle salad, but she had something better, something he didn't have, something she could always count on. Juliet's smile was cat-like. Her mind was racing with possibilities. She had magic. That's page 16. Yeah, I think we can get to page 20, and then we'll call it a night tonight. Okay. Okay, you remember Emma from the first book of Don't Call Me Cupcake? They're having a conversation about what happened at the shop today. So what happened today, Emma asked. Did you fire another employee? Psh! Juliet sat back on the bistro chair. Actually, I did, but this is crazier. You'll never guess who appeared in my shop today. Emma took the chair and sat opposite her and adjusted the apron. Was it the owl from Hogwarts? Did you scold it for being 16 years too late? I'm still waiting for my owl, but no, this is even weirder. She leaned forward. Logan O'Connor came into the shop. Emma stopped arranging her apron and gaped at Juliet. As in your 9th grade crush? Logan O'Connor? Yes. Though crush was putting it mildly. Back then, this was page 19 going to 20, Juliet was going to love him until the galaxies collided and all the stars in the universe burned out. What's he doing here, and did he remember you? Did you still want to kiss him? Moved back here. Barely, and hell's no. Juliet licked another scoop of frosting from her finger. What am I, 14? Emma gave her a knowing smile. I seem to remember that he made quite an impact on you back then with his graduation party and the spin the bottle game. Juliet cringed at that mention of the disastrous night. Please, I'm so over it. Besides, this is the craziest part of all. He's going to be doing the remodel at the shop. He's Romero's nephew. Okay, we're going to try and kick it up a bit. Page 23. What? Emma asked as she cleared the table. Juliet's cousin always could tell when something was bothering her. It just feels like there's a lot of wild change in the air. She felt unsettled, the way she did when she was out there gardening and the wind changed, and she knew first in her bones that a storm was coming. First, Logan O'Connor shows up, and then it turns out he's Romero's nephew, and now Pine Cove Island is going to host a hot dose of Hollywood Bees-rated celebrities stirring things up for the summer. What next? Emma grinned. I'm getting married soon. A wave of happiness swept over Juliet, eclipsing all the feelings of uncertainty. Emma's wedding was a little over a month away, and they've been planning a lovely ceremony at the gazebo overlooking the waterfront. Originally, Emma and Hunter just wanted something small, but it wasn't every day someone got married on Pine Cove Island. By the time that she and Juliet had worked out a guest list, it seemed like the whole town would be there. Yes, you are getting married. Juliet stood and gave her cousin a warm hug, and that's the biggest piece of best news of all. Let's focus on that. Did you pick out a dress yet? Emma shook her head. Want to go dress shopping with me? I'm dropping the book. Oh, either I'm getting really tired or my hands are getting really tired because this is hard to hold. Okay, anyway, page 24. Of course, I can't let you go for something like that important. They chatted and planned for a while, and by the time Juliet drove home, she'd almost forgotten Logan's appearance earlier. It wasn't until she pulled her car down the long road leading up to the cottage that she remembered where there was a black pickup truck stacked with lumber turning toward the other side of the woods beyond her house. Juliet rolled the window down to breathe in a crisp evening air mingled with the scent of roses that lined the path to her house. Something shifted in the air. There was an unusual breeze coming in from the north. Change. She felt it coming with an absolute certainty, the same way she could feel the sunrise in the east every morning. She shivered and then rolled up the window. Well, this has got 27, 28, and 29. About Juliet. Romero stopped in the foyer and turned to Logan. She prefers to work alone. Oh, does she ever, Caleb said with a chuckle. A real firecracker, that one. But she needs help, Romero continued. I've asked her to hire someone part-time at the shop while I'm gone. Fine by me, Logan said. That's her business. He was there to help build and clean things up. Whatever she wanted to do with the employees wasn't his problem. She could hire or fire whomever she liked as long as she stayed out of his way. Romero placed a hand on his shoulder. Just keep an eye on things and make sure she has what she needs, okay? She's an excellent with plants, and the girl has a talent like I've never seen. Like no one's ever seen, Caleb agreed. Pure magic. Logan stuffed his hands into his pockets of his jean, glancing between them. So you guys believe in all that? As a kid growing up, his parents had whispered about the eccentric Holloway family and their odd lifestyle. A bunch of fairy tale nonsense, his father had always said. He was a practical man whose religion was more important than anything else, and his mom had been a PTA president. Neither had any interest in the, quote, woo-woo, unquote, stuff going on with the Holloways. They just rolled their eyes if anyone brought it up, giving it much credibility as the Loch Ness Monster or Sasquatch. Logan's mother was nothing like her brother, Romero. She was straight-laced and uninterested in change, whereas Romero was a kinder, gentler person when it came to other people's differences. It was the one thing that Logan loved so much about him. Of course we believe in the Holloway charms, Caleb said, throwing on his jacket. I've worked with Juliet for 3 years, Romero said. Plants thrive around her, and those bath products she sells are like magic spells. I don't know what she puts in them, but they all do what they're supposed to. Dried tea leaves for headaches, solution to relieve stress, essential oil to blend and help soothe. I once had insomnia after a long flight, Caleb said. She made me this lavender mist for my pillow. I slept like a baby. Now I take it with me on all my trips. The girl has a gift, Romero said simply. Logan couldn't argue there. Just seeing Juliet all grown up and surrounded by flowers brought back that memory of a night he'd forgotten. They were just kids, and she'd been completely innocent. He was 18, heading off to join the army. The world was his to conquer, and nothing was going to hold him back, not even the girl with the pleading turquoise eyes standing in the garden in the moonlight asking him to stay. For one brief moment his decision to leave had wavered. She'd been like a magnetic force of nature, drawing him toward her, making him want to forget everything else. Unfortunately, Romero said, she's not very good with the business side of things. How so? He rubbed the back of his neck. She's kind of scattered. She operates on a different wavelength than the rest of us. Juliet's has systems around the shop. She likes to know where things are, but yet she doesn't translate well to others. If there's anything that you can do to help make the place more organized and efficient, I'd be grateful. Just don't step on Juliet's toes, Caleb whispered theatrically as they walked out the door. You don't want to mess with the Mother Nature. So that takes us through that. I'm trying to get this. Okay. Let's do 56 and 57. Logan parked his truck in the lot behind the flower shop, yawning, and yet another night of restless sleep. He could tell it was going to be one of those mornings. He strode back toward the door, slowing down when he saw Juliet waiting for him. She stood in the doorway, hands on her hips, glaring at him like a barefoot Valkyrie in the rainbow-colored sundress. The early morning breeze swirled around her dark hair, and her berry-stained lips were pursed in anger. Whoa. He knew that look on a woman. Juliet was gloriously ticked off. Morning, he said hesitantly, stopping for a few feet away. He'd been around his share of minefields before. Caution was priority one. What? She said in a lilting, velvety voice. Is that? She pointed to the front of the shop where a large pile of 2x4s were stacked outside. Logan glanced at the supplies he delivered earlier that morning. Lumber. Yes, I know, she ground out, but why is it out there blocking the path to my front door? He stuffed his hands into his pockets of his jeans. Well, now I wanted to take it around back, but the manager told me to leave it out front by the fence. Remember? He waited a beat. Manager? I like their chemistry. It's cute, it's quirky, and they both don't realize that they're meant for each other. And that's where we're going to stop for tonight, because it's getting late, my eyes are getting tired, and I work tomorrow, and I feel like I'm under the weather. So, God bless, stay safe, stay well. I love you all. God bless.